and you'll see Spieth come in and just sweep it away.
It's already it's conceded. The next one's conceded.
There's going to be some laughs in that Euro team room later. Look at Scott.
They cheated. They bent the rules. They even distracted opponents on purpose. From golfers completely losing it on playing partners, to ice-cold confrontations that exploded into full-blown chaos. These are the dirtiest zero sportsmanship moments in golf history. And first we start with this crazy one. Golf prides itself on respect. Respect for the game, the course, and your playing partners. But Charley Hull threw all of that out the window during the US Women's Open when she decided she had zero time for Lexi Thompson's pace of play. Hull, known for her fast, no-nonsense style, was paired with Thompson and Nelly Korda. And by the 8th hole, she'd clearly had enough. As Lexi lined up her putt, Hull didn't even wait around. She walked straight to the 9th tee, sat down, and essentially said with her actions, "You're too slow and I'm not sticking around to watch it." It was a moment dripping with pure disrespect. Fans noticed immediately. Cameras caught Hull looking annoyed, muttering and rushing between shots like she wanted to make a point. And she did, by flat out refusing to engage with her playing partner. Lexi, for her part, later clapped back online, insisting they'd been waiting on every hole and that no one in the group was warned for slow play. But the damage was done. Hull's silent protest had already gone viral, with golf media exploding over the obvious tension. One fan summed it up perfectly. Charley Hull didn't just throw shade, she threw the whole tree at Lexi. This wasn't just impatience, it was a public snub, a play faster or I'm out message that turned one of golf's classiest traditions into a bit of a schoolyard drama. Next up, someone in the crowd shouted something so disgusting, Rory McIlroy stopped in his tracks. And what he did next had that fan thrown out of the Ryder Cup in front of thousands. The 2016 Ryder Cup at Hazeltine was already intense. US fans had packed the course, waving flags, screaming chants, and letting Team Europe know whose turf they were on. But somewhere between the passion and the pride, things crossed the line. Rory had been getting heckled all day. That's par for the course in a Ryder Cup, sure, but this wasn't lighthearted banter. It was vulgar, repetitive, and by the time he walked off the 7th green, one fan made it especially ugly. Nobody knows exactly what was said, but whatever it was, it snapped something in Rory. He stopped mid-walk, turned around, and pointed the guy out in front of thousands. Rory didn't yell, he didn't throw anything. He just made it clear, that guy needs to go. Course officials stepped in immediately. The fan, still shouting as he was led away, was ejected on the spot, escorted out of the Ryder Cup for taking it way too far. And, to this day, he holds the unofficial record for fastest walk of shame ever broadcast on NBC. Next up, if Live Golf needed drama before its season finale, Brooks Koepka and Phil Mickelson delivered it on a silver platter. Brooks, captain of the leading team, walked into the pre-finale press conference with one major advantage: the right to handpick his opponent from any of the remaining 7 teams without a first-round bye. Sitting across from him was Mickelson, and the trash talk started faster than a Phil flop shot. Mickelson, with that trademark smirk, fired the first shot. "Pick me. Let's do a rematch of the 2021 PGA Championship," the same showdown where lefty stunned the golf world, beating Brooks by 2 shots. But Brooks wasn't about to let him have the last laugh. The former world #1 leaned into the mic and delivered a brutal jab.
You probably don't know this because you've never been #1 in the world.
Ooh. That's true. That's true.
They finish at the end of the year, they give you a little trophy.
Gloves
so
are
I've got
off.
2 of those, so I could bring one of them to show you if you'd like.
Boom! A mic drop moment aimed right at Mickelson's legacy. For years, Mickelson's prime was spent living in Tiger Woods' shadow, peaking at world #2, but never hitting the top spot. Phil, never one to back down, fired right back with a dagger of his own.
That's a beautiful green shirt. You have a green jacket.
I do not. I will though, don't worry. I will.
Ouch. If Brooks' world #1 flex was a jab, Mickelson's reference to his 2004 Masters win was a straight knockout punch. All right, brace yourself. Why don't you f*** off? That's not the kind of thing you expect to hear as a player walks off the 18th green. But Ian Poulter wasn't in the mood for golf etiquette anymore. The man was fuming. You could see it in his eyes, jaw clenched, voice raised, his words slicing through the noise like a blade. A fan had pushed him too far, and Poulter, never known for holding back, finally erupted.
Right?
The fan tried to play it cool, told him to relax. Wrong move. Poulter fired back again, louder this time. It wasn't performative, it wasn't some WWE promo for the cameras. This was real anger. Personal. The kind of anger that doesn't show up unless someone's been poking at you all day. Then came the warning. If it continued, the fan would be removed. No more second chances. Only after all that do you realize this wasn't some back nine meltdown. It happened after the round at the end of the final day at Live Golf Houston 2024. Poulter had just finished walking 18 holes in the Texas heat under pressure, with voices trailing him the whole way. And when he reached the end, someone had the nerve to chirp one last time. But here's the thing. When a guy like Poulter, known for intensity, passion, and Ryder Cup fire, tells you to back off, you probably earned it. Which brings us to this next incident. It started with just one voice. One guy in the crowd who thought he was funnier than he really was, but within seconds that voice had every camera pointed at Brooks Koepka, and it nearly triggered one of the most intense face-offs between a pro golfer and a fan in recent memory. It happened at the 2025 PGA Championship. Brooks was grinding through a tough stretch, trying to stay in contention when he pulled his tee shot left on the 17th hole. Nothing unusual, until a fan standing just close enough to be heard decided to take a shot at him. Not about the swing, not about the score. No, this heckler went for the jugular. Should have stayed and lived, Brooks. Easier to win when no one's watching. The words cut through the silence like a slap. You could see it hit Brooks in real time. He stopped, slowly turned toward the gallery, and locked eyes with the guy. Then, without raising his voice, without blinking, he called him out. The gallery went dead quiet. His caddy stiffened. A nearby marshal took a few steps forward, just in case things got out of hand. The fan? Suddenly not so brave. He stayed exactly where he was, arms crossed, not saying another word. For a moment, it looked like Brooks was about to walk over there. And honestly, no one would have stopped him. No punches were thrown. But if looks could kill, that fan wouldn't have made it to the 18th. Next up, well, Oakmont doesn't just test your golf game, it tests your soul. And for Shane Lowry, it didn't take long for the place to chew him up and spit him out. His round started like a slow-motion car crash. Bogey on the first, double on the second, bogey on the third, and then another bogey on the fourth. By the time he tapped in for yet another bogey, the frustration had boiled over. Lowry looked like a man who'd had enough, muttering on a hot mic for the world to hear.
Okay.
But it didn't stop there. Moments later, after missing another putt, Lowry smacked his putter against the ground, his body language screaming, "Get me out of here." It was raw, unfiltered, and completely disrespectful to the game's usual code of composure. Oakmont had officially broken him. The day got worse. On the 14th hole, Lowry picked up his ball without marking it, a penalty so basic it's usually reserved for amateurs on a weekend scramble. He called it the stupidest thing I've ever done. But the damage to his round and his pride was already done. When he stormed off the green, Lowry took out his frustration on a microphone by slamming it into the turf. For Shane Lowry, Oakmont wasn't just a tough course. It was a battlefield he walked away from, beaten, bruised, and visibly fed up. All right, now we're in Scotland, 2014. Glen Eagles Golf Club is buzzing with hostile energy. The European crowd is absolutely relentless. They've been waiting for this moment, the Ryder Cup on home soil, and they're making sure every American player knows exactly where they stand. Then there's this 24-year-old rookie from Texas, Patrick Reed. Nobody really knows who he is yet. He's paired with Jordan Spieth, another young gun, but Reed, he's the wild card, the unknown quantity. But this kid has something different about him. Where other players might shrink under the pressure of thousands of screaming Scottish fans, Reed seems to be feeding off it. On the first tee, a fan yells, "Did you practice your putting, Patrick?" before his singles match against Henrik Stenson, alluding to a short putt Reed had missed the day before. The heckling gets worse as the match progresses. They're on his case constantly, booing his shots, trying to get under his skin any way they can. And then it happens. On the 7th hole, Reed immediately followed Stenson's made 10-foot birdie putt with a shorter one of his own. And Reed quickly put his index finger to his lips in a gesture intended to shush a Scottish audience ready to roar in 2014. The crowd went absolutely ballistic. Of course, it only provoked offended European fans to boo lustily. But Reed didn't care. He just told an entire nation of golf fans to shut up. On their home turf, in their biggest tournament. Oh, and I almost forgot. He went on to beat Stenson 1-up, becoming the only unbeaten American player at Glen Eagles. Next up, Ricky Fowler spun around mid-swing and pointed straight into the crowd. That's not something you see every day, especially not from him. It was the third round of the 2024 Players' Championship at TPC Sawgrass, and Fowler was right in the middle of his tee shot on the par 5 16th. Focused, steady, until it happened. A sound, short, sharp, and completely out of place. Some said it was a phone notification. Others claimed it was a camera shutter. Whatever it was, it hit at the worst possible time, during Fowler's backswing. And it wasn't like they hadn't been warned. Just moments earlier, Ricky's caddy, Ricky Romano, had politely asked the crowd to silence their devices. But someone didn't listen. Fowler made contact with the ball, but immediately turned, pointed, and shouted, "You! What are you doing?" It clearly rattled him. His drive found the fairway, but everything after that unraveled. 2 shots into the water, a double bogey. A round that had been steady turned into a car crash. He finished with a 76. Let's say even the nicest guy on tour has a breaking point. All right, on to the next one. So he called out Rory McIlroy's biggest failure, and that's when Rory went crazy. Absolutely no one saw it coming. So what happened? Well, it all went down at the 2025 Players' Championship. Rory was walking down the fairway, focused, dialed in, doing his thing, when someone from the crowd decided to test him. And not just with some random trash talk. The guy was later identified as Luke Potter, a college golfer from the University of Texas. Not exactly a nobody in the golf world. But on that day, he decided to act like a heckler. And not just any heckler, one who brought up the darkest moment of Rory's career. Don't choke like Augusta 2011, Rory. You still see those trees in your sleep? Rory didn't laugh, didn't look amused. At first he tried to ignore it, but Potter kept at it, holding up his phone and recording Rory from just feet away, still mocking that infamous Sunday meltdown at the Masters. That's when Rory snapped. He turned, walked straight toward Potter, and without saying a word, reached out and grabbed the phone right out of his hand. No warning, no hesitation, just took it. Then he turned his back and walked away, leaving Potter standing there like a kid who just got grounded in public. The whole thing was caught on someone else's phone, of course. The clip exploded online within minutes. People argued about who crossed the line. The heckler for bringing up ancient history, or Rory for snatching the phone like a bouncer taking keys from a drunk. So if you think you can poke them without consequences, think again. Coming in next. Sometimes the worst kind of trash talk comes from the gallery. Some random guy who thinks he knows better than the pros, who shouts advice from the cheap seats, who runs his mouth about how easy the game looks. But what happens when that guy gets called on it? Thursday, Hazeltine, 2016, again on this list. Andy Sullivan and Rory McIlroy are struggling with a 12-foot putt on the 6th green, missing it over and over. Professional golfers, the best in the world, and they can't figure out this one putt. That's when some loudmouth from North Dakota starts running his mouth. David Johnson, an insurance agent from tiny Mayville, starts heckling from the gallery. He's telling everyone within earshot that he could make that putt himself. Most players ignore hecklers. They've heard it all before. But Henrik Stenson, he's had enough. The Iceman locks eyes with Johnson and issues a challenge that no fan ever expects to hear. You think you can make it? Let's see it. The crowd goes crazy. Suddenly, Johnson's being pulled out of the gallery and onto the green. Then, Justin Rose walks over and drops a crisp $100 bill right next to the ball. Make this, and it's yours. Johnson's heart is pounding. He complains about the putter being too short, asks Stenson for a read. But the Iceman just laughs and tells him, "No way. You said you could make it, so do it." So, Johnson takes his stance. The crowd goes silent. He pulls back the putter and rams it straight into the back of the cup. The place explodes. Johnson's pumping his fists like he just won the Masters. He's hugging Rory McIlroy. The pros are shaking their heads in disbelief. Some random guy from North Dakota just showed up 3 Ryder Cup players on their practice green for $100 and made it look easy. Which brings us to one of the most flat-out disrespectful moments you'll ever see at the Masters. And somehow, it didn't end with security walking him out. Jose Ballester, just 21 years old and making his Masters debut, had the perfect chance to introduce himself as golf's next big thing. But instead of making headlines with his swing, he made them for something way more outrageous. It all started with a hat, an upside-down Sun Devils cap, a playful nod to his Arizona State days. Some fans laughed it off. Augusta? Not so much. But hey, a hat is harmless until it wasn't. Then came the moment that had social media in full meltdown mode. Mid-round, hole 13. Rays Creek? Ballester suddenly needed to go. But instead of walking 30 seconds to a restroom, he reportedly decided to handle his business right there. Yes, in Rays Creek, Augusta National's sacred water hazard. The same water where Masters' dreams have either soared or sunk, now turned into Ballester's personal bathroom. The reaction? Pure chaos. Fans were demanding an instant DQ. One angry post read, "Not only is that hat a crime, but this? Ban him for life." Another called it the most disgraceful thing ever done at Augusta. Ballester later tried to laugh it off, saying he completely forgot about the restrooms and joking it was one of the few claps he got that day. But the internet was already calling it Ballester's stream. And once that nickname hit, there was no going back. Next up, he turned around with a look that shut down the entire gallery. Nobody expected Zach Johnson to lose it like that, but after what he'd just heard, he wasn't letting it slide. It happened during the final round of the 2024 Waste Management Phoenix Open. The scene was typical for Scottsdale. Loud music, beer flying, fans packed into every hole like it was a football game instead of a golf tournament. But as the day went on, something changed. Zach Johnson had been dealing with hecklers all afternoon. Not the funny, harmless stuff. This was different. The comments were sharper, more personal. Fans weren't just chirping about his swing. They were going after him, his Ryder Cup captaincy, his decisions, his entire reputation. And finally, between shots on the back nine, someone said something that made Johnson stop walking. He turned around, took a few steps toward the gallery, and with his voice raised just enough to carry over the crowd, he snapped,
Oh, don't sir me. Somebody said it. I'm just sick of it. Just shut up. Okay.
The fans around him went silent. Everyone could feel the shift. The video of the moment blew up online. And after the round, Johnson didn't back down. He said the tournament had crossed the line. That fan behavior was out of control. And that after more than 2 decades on tour, he'd never seen anything like it. All right, imagine sitting in a press conference watching one of your own players systematically destroy your reputation on live television while you sit helplessly just 3 feet away. Welcome to Tom Watson's nightmare at Glen Eagles, September 28, 2014. The setup was already toxic. Europe had just demolished the United States 16.5 to 11.5, continuing America's humiliating streak of European dominance. Watson, brought back at age 65 to recapture the magic of his 1993 victory, had been criticized all week for his old-school approach and poor communication. But the real explosion had started the night before. In Saturday's team meeting, Watson took no responsibility for the team's struggles, scoffed at a gift the players had given him, and began the session by tearing into his own player's performance. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Phil Mickelson, benched for an entire session for the first time in 10 Ryder Cup appearances, was seething. 24 hours later, the entire U.S. team sat on the losers' press conference podium. 8 questions had been asked when a reporter innocently asked about what had worked for America in 2008 versus recent failures. Phil lit the fuse. There were 2 things that Paul Azinger did in 2008. Mickelson began, methodically dismantling Watson's leadership. He got everybody invested in the process, invested in who they were going to play with, who the picks were going to be. When pressed about whether players had input this week, Phil delivered the nuclear option. No, nobody here was in any decision. The fallout was immediate. The criticism led directly to the creation of the Ryder Cup task force and eventually helped the U.S. win at Hazeltine in 2016. This one takes us back to Shane Lowry, and trust me, you have to do something pretty wild to make this list twice. Some players lose their cool over a divot. But a pitch mark? That's 100 times worse, and Lowry let everyone within earshot know exactly how he felt. It happened at the PGA Championship, when Lowry's drive found the fairway, but with a brutal twist. Instead of a clean lie, his ball ended up plugged into another player's pitch mark. For the pros, that's the golf equivalent of a slap in the face. But instead of handling it with composure, Lowry decided to make a scene. When the officials told him there would be no relief, no drop, play it as it lies, Lowry didn't just nod and move on. He argued, he tried to plead his case, going back and forth with the officials, clearly frustrated and convinced he was getting the short end of the stick. But the ruling stood. Lowry stepped up, took the shot from that crater of a lie, and it wasn't pretty. The ball came out poorly, and that's when he absolutely lost it, slamming his club into the turf with such force you could practically feel the ground shake. As if that wasn't enough, he barked out, "F this place." And later, after missing his par putt, he even flipped off his golf ball like the ball was somehow to blame for his mess. The whole episode screamed zero class. Arguing with officials, trash-talking the course, and throwing a tantrum like a weekend hacker? Not a good look for a major champion. And just when you thought you'd seen it all, here comes this. Something shattered in the trees, loud enough to make the whole gallery turn around. At first, nobody was sure what had happened. But seconds later, all eyes were on John Daly, and a completely frozen fan standing in front of him. It was the first round of the 2008 Australian Open at Royal Sydney Golf Club. Daly had just pulled his tee shot into the rough near the 9th hole and was making his way through the trees to find it. He was already irritated, searching for his ball, trying to reset, and that's when a fan got way too close. A man named Brad Clegg stepped in with a camera, not from a distance, not subtle. He held it up just inches from Daly's face and let the flash go off. Daly didn't hesitate. He ripped the camera out of the guy's hands, turned, and smashed it against a tree. No words, no warning. Just a loud crack as the camera exploded into pieces. The fan stood there speechless, and Daly? He simply looked over and said, "You want it back? I'll buy you a new one." Later, he explained that the flash had burned his eyes, and it wouldn't have mattered if he was 10 under. He still would have done the exact same thing. And in a twist only John Daly could pull off, he wasn't punished. Turns out the fan wasn't even supposed to have a camera that close in the first place. So, no fine, no disqualification, and no apology. Just one broken camera and a new chapter in the legend of golf's most unpredictable man. Next up, well, some things you just don't do. You don't criticize your teammates, you don't air dirty laundry in public, and you definitely don't stab someone in the back when they're fighting for the team. But apparently nobody told Nick Faldo the rules. Here's a guy sitting comfortably in a broadcast booth, safe behind a microphone, no pressure, no stress, just commenting on the action while other people do the hard work. He's watching Europe battle back from a tough morning at Gleneagles. Sergio Garcia just saved a crucial half point with Rory McIlroy. The momentum is shifting. That's when Faldo decided to drop a bomb. The host mentions Garcia's amazing Ryder Cup record. When asked if the 2008 Ryder Cup still hurt, he went for the throat, saying he was useless. Half a point, bad attitude. Anyway, we move on 6 years later. Wait, what? Did Europe's former captain just call his own player useless on live TV during an active Ryder Cup while Garcia was out there fighting for points? The European team room exploded when word got back. Players were furious. Ian Poulter couldn't believe it. He said that the guys are fuming. I'm shocked that he has said it. It's a cheap shot, and it's the worst possible timing. Turns out that Faldo was the captain who lost that 2008 Ryder Cup, the only European captain to lose since 1999. And now, he was blaming his players for his own failure. Next up, one word. That's all it took for the entire gallery to go silent. And just like that, Zach Johnson became the center of the most uncomfortable moment at Augusta in 2024. The 12th hole at the Masters is legendary for beauty, for disaster, and for breaking the hearts of even the best. And on this particular day, it absolutely chewed up Zach Johnson and spit him out. A tee shot into Rays Creek, a chunked pitch, a lip-out putt, and he ended with a triple bogey. Johnson walked off the green with his head down and shoulders tight, and then, just as he passed by the ropes, right near a group of stunned spectators, he shouted something that wasn't exactly family-friendly. Off. Loud, sharp, clear enough to make jaws drop. And more than a few people thought he was yelling it at them. Phones didn't catch the buildup, but they definitely caught the moment. Clips flooded social media, debates sparked, and then Paige Spiranak chimed in. "You can't just scream at patrons at Augusta," she posted. "It's not a frat party, it's the Masters." The post exploded. Thousands of likes, hundreds of replies. Suddenly, Johnson's outburst wasn't just a one-day story, it was the conversation in golf. Here we are, back in 2022, and Rory McIlroy found himself facing not just a heckling fan, but a piece of technology that seemed straight out of a golf-themed episode of Black Mirror. The setting was the BMW Championship at Wilmington Country Club, Delaware, a tournament that was about to make headlines for reasons nobody could have ever predicted. McIlroy was lining up a crucial shot, his focus locked in despite the jeers of a particularly loud heckler in the gallery. But then, something strange caught his attention on the green. At first glance, it looked like a regular golf ball, but then it moved. Not rolled, but darted across the green, as if possessed by some mischievous spirit. And that's when the truth emerged. This wasn't just a golf ball, it was a remote-controlled golf ball, zipping erratically across the pristine green like a wayward robotic prankster. Somewhere in the crowd, an unseen puppet master held the controls, steering their tiny disruptor with precision aimed at one of the greatest golfers in the world. The ball, apparently programmed for maximum disruption, began following McIlroy around. But Rory wasn't having it. With the crowd watching in complete silence, he made his move. In one quick motion, he lunged for the ball like a hawk going after its prey. Without missing a beat, he turned, marched straight to the nearest lake, and chucked the thing into the water with the kind of frustration that said, "Enough of this nonsense." Next up, golf is supposed to be a gentleman's game. Quiet respect for officials. Polite disagreements when things don't go your way. Say please and thank you, even when you're frustrated. But Brooks Koepka wasn't really in the mood that day. 2021 Ryder Cup at Whistling Straits. Brooks Koepka and Daniel Berger are one down to Sergio Garcia and Jon Rahm. The Americans need points badly. Every shot matters. Then, Berger's drive on the 15th hole finds the worst possible spot. Long fescue grass right next to a bunker. But that's not the problem. The real issue is what's lurking underneath. A drainage area that Brooks claims will interfere with his swing. Now, here's the thing about Brooks Koepka. This guy had just injured his wrist a few weeks earlier when his club hit a tree root at the Tour Championship. He had to withdraw from that tournament and barely made it back in time for the Ryder Cup. His wrist is still fragile. So, when rules official David Price comes over and takes a look, Brooks starts pleading his case. He's pointing at the drain, explaining how his club will hit it on the way down. "You don't think my club might hit right there?" he asks. "Have you ever seen me hit a ball?" Price doesn't buy it. No free relief. Brooks asks for a second opinion. Another 10 minutes of waiting and discussion. Mark Litton from the European Tour comes over, takes another look, and backs up the original ruling. That's when Brooks snaps. He points directly at both officials and delivers the line. "If I break my wrist, it's on both of you." The best part of this moment is that Brooks went ahead and hit a perfect shot onto the green anyway. No broken wrist, no drama. Just a clean strike that made all his complaining look ridiculous. Next up, things get even weirder. Something snapped. And the next thing you know, Billy Horschel was going against the crowd. No warning, no buildup. Just raw frustration boiling over in front of thousands of fans. The 2024 WM Phoenix Open had already been spiraling into madness. Drunken fans, broken etiquette, and non-stop interruptions had become the norm. But this time, things went too far. On the 11th hole, Billy Horschel was standing with his playing partner, Niccolò Galletti, who was lining up for his second shot. Everyone could feel the moment. Galletti was focused, quiet, dialed in. Except for the fans behind the ropes. A group of spectators kept talking, loudly. Even after being asked to quiet down, they didn't stop. And that's when Horschel turned around and lit them up.
Buddy, when he's over a shot, shut the hell up, man. Come on, you're trying to hit a damn golf shot here.
Cameras caught the moment instantly, and within hours, it was circulating everywhere online. Horschel looked like a man pushed to the edge, not for himself, but for someone else. After the round, he doubled down. He said it wasn't about drama, it was about respect. That fans crossing the line, especially during someone's shot, ruins more than just a moment. It ruins the game. But the real question was never answered. What exactly did those fans say that made Billy blow up like that in the first place? And now, before we get into whatever chaos the next Ryder Cup might bring this year, let's rewind to 1999. One moment there changed everything. A single putt turned into a disgraceful scene, all sparked by one American player. The Battle of Brookline, they called it, It was Sunday, September 26th. America was down 10-6 and needed a miracle. Europe just needed 4 points to retain the cup. It should have been over. But the Americans came roaring back, winning match after match. The impossible was happening. And it all came down to 2 matches still on the course. Colin Montgomery against Payne Stewart, and this other guy facing Jose Maria Olazabal. Justin Leonard was getting destroyed. 4 down with 7 holes to play. The Spanish veteran was cruising toward victory, but then Leonard caught fire. He holed a 40-footer at the 15th to cut the lead, made it to the 17th hole all square. That's when Leonard faced the putt of his life. 45 feet, uphill, everything on the line. The ball rolled up the slope and disappeared into the cup. Leonard was 1 up with 1 to play. America was about to complete the greatest comeback in Ryder Cup history. But here's the problem. Olazabal still had a 22-foot putt to tie the hole and keep Europe's hopes alive. That didn't stop the Americans from losing their minds. Players, wives, caddies, Captain Ben Crenshaw, Tom Lehman leading the charge, Phil Mickelson celebrating with his wife, Tiger Woods leaping in the air. Olazabal stood there watching this circus, knowing he still had to make the most important putt of his career with all this madness swirling around him. When order was finally restored, the damage was done. Olazabal missed. America won the cup, by far the most disrespectful moment in Ryder Cup history, and it wasn't even close. Next up, nobody expected fists to fly at a PGA Tour event. But when John Daly's ball came screaming into the group ahead, all hell nearly broke loose. It happened in 1994 at the NEC World Series of Golf. Daly, already known for his grip it and rip it style and unpredictable temper, was charging through the final round when things went off the rails. On one particular hole, Daly didn't wait. He launched his shot straight down the fairway, right into the group ahead. That group included pro golfer Jeff Roth, who barely had time to react as Daly's ball came crashing in dangerously close. Now, hitting into a group is one of those unspoken lines you just don't cross in professional golf. But this wasn't just a warning shot. This was reckless. Roth was furious. But before he could even respond, someone else stepped in. His father. That's right, Jeff Roth's dad came storming out like it was a bar fight in slow motion. He marched right up to Daly, and what followed was something straight out of a soap opera. Shouting, shoving, full-blown chaos. And Daly? He didn't exactly de-escalate. He stood his ground, chest out, shouting right back. The PGA Tour slapped Daly with a $13,000 fine and a suspension, citing conduct unbecoming of a professional. But by then, the damage was done. The clip made its rounds, the headlines exploded, and fans suddenly realized something. John Daly doesn't just play golf like a wrecking ball, he brings that same energy to the parking lot too. Next up, 20,000 screaming American fans. A hostile crowd that had been heckling him all day. Someone had already been ejected for shouting crude comments. The atmosphere at Hazeltine National Golf Club was absolutely toxic. And then Rory McIlroy stepped up to a 20-foot eagle putt on the 16th green. The Northern Irishman had been taking abuse from the Minnesota crowd for hours. Every shot, every hole, the jeers kept getting louder and nastier. Europe was desperate after getting whitewashed 4-0 in the morning session. They were desperate. McIlroy was partnered with rookie Thomas Pieters, trying to salvage something from what looked like a disaster. Dustin Johnson and Matt Kuchar were right there, America's golden boys ready to put the nail in the coffin. But this was Europe's chance to fight back. McIlroy lined up the downhill slider. The crowd fell silent, waiting. The ball rolled and dropped into the cup for eagle. Match over. Europe gets a point. What happened next stunned everyone watching. McIlroy turned to face the hostile American gallery, pumped his fists in the air, and delivered not 1 but 2 theatrical bows, like he was taking a curtain call at Carnegie Hall. Then he screamed, "Come on!" and punched the Minnesota air with pure defiance. McIlroy later admitted he'd planned the whole thing. Even before I hit that putt, I wanted to put an exclamation point on that session for us. I honestly actually thought about the celebration before I hit the putt, he said. All right, next up, it wasn't Patrick Reed who threw the first shove, but it sure felt like his entire team was ready for a street fight. At the 2019 President's Cup in Australia, things were already ugly. Reed had been battling more than just the course. Fans were relentless. After his infamous rules controversy just a week earlier, he became the villain of the tournament. And the Australian crowd? They were loving every second of it. The jeers were brutal. Every hole, every shot, one fan after another lined up to take their turn. And eventually, someone said the wrong thing to the wrong guy, but it wasn't Reed who reacted. It was his caddy. And his caddy just so happened to be his brother-in-law. Kessler Corain had heard enough. According to him, the fan had been heckling nonstop, following them from hole to hole, trying to get under Reed's skin. And at one point, as they were walking off the green, the guy mouthed off again. Louder, meaner, and right in their face. That's when Kessler turned around and shoved the guy, straight up shoved him. No warning, no words, just hands. Security had to step in. The moment didn't last long, but it was caught on video and spread like wildfire. The PGA responded fast. Kessler was immediately suspended for the final day of the tournament, and Reed had to play without him on the bag. An awkward moment, to say the least. Next, there's trash talk, and then there's psychological warfare. Seve Ballesteros didn't just play golf. He played with people's heads. And nobody did it better. It was the 1987 Ryder Cup at Muirfield Village. The Europeans are trying to do something that's never been done before, win on American soil. The pressure is massive. Every hole matters. Every shot matters. First hole of the match. Seve and Jose Maria Olazabal are facing Curtis Strange and Tom Kite. Strange has a tricky downhill putt and runs it past the hole. Here, when you miss a putt long, you have what's called a through line. That's the path your ball might take if your next putt goes too far. Players protect that line because any scuff or footprint could throw off their next shot. Olazabal putts and wants to finish out quickly, but Strange stops him. Wait a minute, he says, you're right on my through line. That's when Seve pounces. He comes charging up like a bull seeing red, and he gets right in Strange's face with 3 simple words that somehow sound like a threat. That bother you? Strange says yes, it does bother him. Oh my, the tension. But Steve didn't just talk the talk. He stomps over to his chip shot, still fuming, takes one look at the hole, and then chips it straight into the back of the cup like he's throwing a dart. The ball disappears. Seve pumps his fist right at Strange, walks off the green like he owns the place. His message was crystal clear. Try stopping me now. Seve and Olazabal won that match 2-1, and Europe won the Ryder Cup for the first time ever on American soil. Next up, just before the putter made contact with the ball, someone yelled from the crowd. It wasn't an accident, it was a deliberate attempt to sabotage his putt, and it nearly turned the green into a battlefield. Max Homa stood over a 5-foot birdie putt on the 17th green at the 2023 BMW Championship. The moment was tense, the stakes high, but Homa looked calm, locked in. Then, right in the middle of his backswing, a voice cut through the silence. Pull it! Everyone on the green flinched. The timing couldn't have been worse, but Homa didn't miss. He sank the putt, stepped away from the hole, and immediately turned to confront the heckler. He pointed toward the crowd and called the guy a clown. His caddy, Joe Greiner, joined in. Both of them clearly fed up. It wasn't just about that one moment, it was about what it represented. The fan, it turned out, had placed a $3 bet that Homa would miss. That tiny wager nearly disrupted a professional golf tournament, and Homa made sure it didn't go unnoticed. Later, he spoke about the incident. When fans care more about their bets than the integrity of the competition, things get dangerous fast. He said he was used to pressure. He's not used to being heckled for a $3 payoff. And on that green, in that moment, he proved exactly why betting against Max Homa is never a good idea. Up next, they were supposed to be the future of American Ryder Cup golf. 2 young stars who had built a 4-1-2 record together, becoming the faces of USA's resurgence. Fans loved them. Captains trusted them. They seemed destined to dominate for a decade. Then came Paris 2018, and everything exploded in the most public way possible. Captain Jim Furyk made a decision that would haunt American golf. He split up the proven partnership. Patrick Reed and Jordan Spieth, America's most successful Ryder Cup duo, were separated for the first time. Spieth was paired with rising star Justin Thomas. Reed was left to struggle alongside Tiger Woods, who was still finding his competitive form after years of personal and physical struggles. The chemistry was immediately toxic. The Tiger pairing lost both their matches, looking uncomfortable and out of sync. Meanwhile, the other duo thrived, winning points and appearing natural together. As Europe built a commanding lead toward a humiliating 17.5 to 10.5 defeat, Frustration was written all over Reed's face. After the crushing loss, Patrick Reed could have taken the diplomatic route. Instead, he chose scorched earth. In a New York Times interview, Reed publicly destroyed both his former partner and his captain. The issue's obviously with Jordan not wanting to play with me. The captain put me with Tiger, and that didn't work out. The comments were devastating. Reed had essentially accused Spieth of abandoning him and blamed Furick for catastrophic leadership. But worse, he aired the team's dirty laundry in America's newspaper of record while the wounds from defeat were still fresh. Now this next one, you truly have to see it to believe it. Before the putter could strike the ball, the yelling started. And before anyone could figure out what was happening, ice cubes started flying through the air. Yes, actual ice cubes. Because apparently that was the protest method of choice that day. The 1969 PGA Championship wasn't supposed to be controversial. But somewhere between the competition and the crowd, the entire event started to unravel. Security was light, tensions were high, and then, suddenly, things got ugly. As Nicklaus stood over a putt, demonstrators began yelling from just outside the ropes, trying to throw him off. But they weren't just there for him. The real target was Gary Player. While walking down the fairway, Player was pelted with ice, hurled from the crowd in what would become a defining moment of fan-player conflict in golf history. The protests weren't random. They were tied to the anti-apartheid movement, aimed at calling out South Africa's racist regime, and, by extension, any South African athlete seen as representing it. Whether or not players supported the system didn't seem to matter to the demonstrators that day. Security was quickly tightened. Tension stayed high for the rest of the tournament, and the incident left a permanent mark on how golf handles crowd control at major events. Now it's time for a very problematic relationship. Once upon a time, there were two guys who absolutely hated each other. Welcome to 1957, Lindrick Golf Club in Yorkshire, and the guys were Eric Brown and Tommy Bolt. Thunderbolt was living up to his nickname, famous for breaking clubs and throwing tantrums. Brown was equally intense, but in a different way. Cold, calculated, and absolutely ruthless. The match starts and Brown jumps out to a 3-up lead. That's when Bolt decides to get creative with his gamesmanship. He starts playing incredibly slow, taking forever over every shot, standing over putts for what feels like hours. Brown knows exactly what's happening. This is sabotage. So he whispers something to his caddy, who takes off running toward the clubhouse. Then he comes back with a folding chair. Brown sets up the chair right there on the course. Every time Bolt takes his sweet time, Brown sits down, crosses his legs, makes himself comfortable, like he's watching a movie instead of playing the biggest golf tournament of his life. He wins 4-3 at the end of it. There was no handshake, no respect. Just pure, calculated disrespect that helped Britain win their first Ryder Cup in over 2 decades. Coming in next. Every Ryder Cup reveals something about character, how players handle pressure, how they treat opponents, how they respect the traditions of the game. And sometimes those revelations aren't pretty. This is the 2008 Ryder Cup at Valhalla. The Americans are down badly and desperate for points. Anthony Kim is just 23 years old, a hotshot rookie making his Ryder Cup debut. Sergio Garcia is already a seasoned veteran with multiple Ryder Cup appearances under his belt. Sunday singles, 6th hole. Garcia's drive finds trouble down the right side. Thick, gnarly grass that looks like it hasn't been cut all season. When he gets to his ball, there's another problem. Stone steps right behind where he needs to stand. So Garcia does what any smart player would do. He calls over the rules official. He's not trying to cheat or get some unfair advantage. He's just asking if those stone steps interfere with his stance enough to get relief. That's basic golf rules stuff that happens every week on tour. While Garcia is having a perfectly reasonable discussion with European Tour official John Paramore, Kim decides to stick his nose in. The rookie walks over, clearly annoyed that this is taking so long. And what does he do? Well, just ask if he calls that a normal stance. Yeah, here's a 23-year-old kid basically calling out a Ryder Cup veteran in front of thousands of people, questioning his integrity, suggesting Garcia is trying to pull a fast one. Garcia looks at him like he can't believe what he just heard. Kim tries to play it off, but the damage is done. All right, on to the next. When players aren't losing composure at the Ryder Cup, look to the crowd for trouble. A little trash talk is part of sports. But what happened at Brookline in 1999 wasn't banter. It was vicious cruelty beyond anything golf had seen. At the country club in Brookline, Massachusetts, America trailed 10-6 heading into Sunday singles, needing a miracle comeback. The massive pressure somehow transformed a golf gallery into something resembling a mob. Colin Montgomery became their favorite target, the emotional Scottish star nicknamed Rabbit Ears because he heard everything, and they gave him an earful. The heckling started early and escalated. Fans shouted, "Mrs. Doubtfire," mocking his appearance and weight. They yelled crude comments during his backswing, calling him names so vile, Montgomery later said they were too coarse to repeat. Worse, they attacked his family. Personal comments about his wife, children, and private life that had nothing to do with golf. It got so bad that Colin's father, James, left the course entirely. Even Payne Stewart, Montgomery's opponent, was disgusted. The gentlemanly American repeatedly intervened, telling the crowd to back off. After America clinched the cup and their match ended, Stewart conceded the 18th hole so Montgomery wouldn't endure one more hole of abuse. Next up, and it's courtesy of Keith Mitchell. He steps up to the tee, takes his swing, and instantly hates it. You can see it on his face. The ball veers right, not even close to the line he wanted, and that's when he completely loses it, slamming his driver into the turf so hard you'd think the ground owed him money. And just when it couldn't get any worse, it did. Right as his ball is sailing through the air, a loud air horn blasts across TPC Sawgrass. Play is officially suspended. The timing is almost comical. Mitchell throwing a tantrum while the course is literally shutting down around him. But here's the kicker. His shot counts. No mulligans, no redo. Did it cover? He asks his caddy, probably praying for a miracle. It did not, the caddy replies. It went in the water? Yes. Mitchell doesn't say a word. He just takes a slow, furious walk forward and slams the driver into the turf again, as if he's trying to break the course for daring to betray him. This wasn't just frustration. It was pure zero-class behavior, like watching a weekend hacker throw a fit. Only this time, it was at one of golf's biggest events with the whole world watching. Next up, and we've got a moment where Bryson Desambo nearly found himself in a full-blown standoff with a fan, all because of this incident. Bryson Desambo might be one of the most polarizing figures in golf, but even his biggest critics had to respect what he did at the 2021 PGA Championship. It was the final round, and the energy was insane. Desambo had just walked off the 9th green, heading toward the 10th tee. A long par 5 that played perfectly to his power game. Fans crowded the ropes, all hoping to get a close look at the big hitter. In the middle of the crowd was a young boy, barely tall enough to see over the barrier, eyes wide as his favorite player passed by. Desambo tossed a ball in his direction. A quick, kind gesture that should have made the kid's day. But just as the ball was about to reach its target, an older man lunged forward and snatched it right out of the air. The kid froze. His excitement turned into disbelief. And Bryson? He saw the whole thing. He stopped walking and turned back toward the man, eyes locked in. For a second, it looked like he might walk straight into the crowd. The moment got tense. Real tense. The crowd around them went silent. Phones came out. The man, clearly embarrassed, tried to shrug it off, but Bryson didn't budge. After a few long seconds of uncomfortable eye contact and pressure, the guy finally gave in and handed the ball to the boy it was meant for all along. The kid lit up. Bryson gave him a quick nod and kept walking.